And we're back with more News Talk, Saga 960. So very glad you could join us on the Mark Petrona Show. Well, I guess the government has been handing out tens of millions of dollars. I mean, not only to the media at large. So we're talking about all those newspapers that were the beneficiaries of hundreds of millions of dollars in money for whatever reason. They called it the media fund in order to help these companies. But now the broadcasters, because a lot of these broadcasters were saying, well, we didn't get government money. We're not the same as those newspapers. Well, it turns out that they got a lot of money in pandemic cash, $103 million worth of federal money. Well, what kind of impact does that have in terms of bringing the government, or bringing the media rather, into your corner? Maybe making sure that the media is not as tough on you as they might otherwise be doing if they rely on you for whatever, keeping the lights on at some of these organizations. Let's bring in Daniel Bordman, who's been keeping an eye on this. He works with the National Telegraph. Daniel, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. Yes. So unfortunately, we didn't get any of that $100 million at the National Telegraph in pandemic bailout money, whatever it is, subsidies, and all this. And it's not like you can make the argument that, it was just like CERB, where they gave out loans that everyone had to repay. These seems to be like free money, just grants. Like, here's some money to whatever the reasoning is. I do remember the reasoning Justin Trudeau gave for the first $600 million media bailout was the government was going to subsidize the media to preserve the independence of the media. So we're going to nationalize the media to make sure the media is independent and separate from the government, which now owns it. This is the logic.
Well, the complete absence of logic, if you ask me. I mean, you're going to make sure that these people are dependent on you for money, and the more dependent they are, the less likely they are to hold you to account. And by the way, not only are they more likely to not hold you to account, they're more likely to go after your main opponents. And so we're seeing stepped up attacks against people like Pierre Poilievre, whom the media now is afraid of, just like the Liberals are. But I mean, it's interchangeable now. The Liberal government, the Trudeau cult, and the media are one and the same. I mean, it's just one is an extension of the other. And that has money has helped make that happen.
Yeah. It's the Liberals' PR department. That's what the media is. It's the PR department of the federal Liberal Party. And you're right. There's no distinction now. They own the media. They own print media. They own broadcast media. If it's a major corporate, or what you would call mainstream media in Canada, it is funded by the government. And this is in addition to the fact that we already have a state broadcaster in the CBC. Now, you can argue the CBC is kind of better than these because it's open. At least the CBC is our state media. It's our, whatever you want to call it, state propagandist. But the others are now state propaganda, but as the facade of a private company. So you can't trust anything when it comes to the media now or anything with the slant is going to be slanted in favor of the Liberals.
Yeah, they don't own Blacklock's reporter, though. Not yet, anyway. And I don't think they ever will. Knowing Holly Doan and Tom Korski, I doubt they would sell out. It'd be the last to allow that to happen. But here's their story. TV broadcasters received more than $100 million in direct federal subsidies through the pandemic. The CRTC disclosed that. The cash grants were in addition to waivers on millions in mandatory licensing fees. So they got a break on those fees, and they got $100 million. Well, it was a total of $104 million, including the breaks on the fees as well as just handouts. Over 75% of the assistance in 2021 was in the form of the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy. I mean, supposedly everybody was watching TV. I mean, they should have been making money. I don't understand why they needed all that government money, but the other thing is, of course, they had to accept the money. In order for that to happen, in order for these companies to get the cash, they had to say, yeah, give it to me, right? I mean, it's not enough for the government to say, hey, we're going to give you some cash because we like you so much. But you also need the recipient to say, yeah, bring it, baby. I'm all in. And that's very troubling because those broadcasters should know that once they take that money, that is a deal with the devil. That is a Faustian bargain that you make with government. And once that process begins, it's extremely difficult to extricate yourself from bringing in even more money because of course that money comes in, you like it. Oh, look, we can buy stuff, we can hire people, we can do this, we can do that. And then all of a sudden it's cut off and you freak out because they literally make you a dependent of the state. They make you a ward of the state. And the media, they should understand that there's a danger to that. And
Yeah, I
so
mean,
it appears that
their
they
job is
don't get that. They don't
I
get
mean,
that.
they claim that they speak truth to power and they do the hard reporting. Any journalist or media organization worth its salt would say no to the money and say, we have a duty to remain independent. You can, gain a lot of trust with that. But the job of the mainstream media now is to speak power to truth. And that's, and yeah, they sold out. It's pretty, this is a pretty cut and dry story. The media sold out. They're now owned by the government. And you've seen this in print media, mainstream media, any corporate media, even like Sun Media, which the left will scream is a far right rag. During the convoy, a lot of mercenaries within Sun Media were deployed to do the government's bidding from their end. The most famous story was one Sun Media journalist actually reported on the fact that a woman was trampled by a horse. And despite seeing it and having video evidence, he was asked by the CEOs of the company to withdraw the statement and say, you didn't actually see that. He refused, and they couldn't make him do it. But then they deployed one of their mercenaries, who I'm not going to name because his name is not Ryan, and I think his reporting's a little bit silly. But he came in to say, no, the woman wasn't trampled by a horse. It was a bicycle scared the horse. Even though I think Beth from the Post Millennial, she has actual footage of the bicycle and can definitively disprove, like there's video evidence definitively disproving the police's and the government's narrative on the horse trampling. The video is out there. I believe Beth Bassett, Post Millennial, definitively has the visual evidence that they're lying. And despite this, people were still deployed to account for the narrative within conservative right-wing rags, as a lot of your detractors will call it. So it's totally bought and paid for. Yes, there'll be some conservative views that'll sneak through with the National Post or through the Sun Media sometimes, but it gets down to crunch time and there's an actual problem that the government needs a narrative on, like, oh, okay, we didn't trample a woman with a horse, despite what the evidence shows. Okay, deploy the mercenaries within these organizations to spin the government narrative.
I got to ask you about this story as well. Prime Minister Trudeau unveiling plans to create a special team focused on countering Russian disinformation and propaganda as Ukrainians prepare to mark the 6-month anniversary of Moscow's invasion of the country. We've sent 3.1 billion over to Ukraine. I wonder how much Zelensky ended up with that money. I mean, that's one of the most corrupt countries on the planet. And so the idea that the people are going to benefit, I don't know.
Throwing money.
I doubt there's much oversight as far as
that's what I'm saying. I'm fine. Listen, Ukraine is our ally, Russia is our enemy. I get that. But there's an old foreign policy common sense says don't throw money into a war zone. Money will never get to its intended target. Someone's going to take the money. If we want to give them, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of aid in hard weapons, like here's guns and bombs, like we're giving you guns and bombs. So then they're like, okay, we have guns and bombs. We'll use these to defend ourselves. That I'm fine with. But you're right. If it's just straight cash into a war zone, you're lucky if 10% of that makes it into the hands of the people to buy weapons or guns. So I think $200 million worth of weapons is more valuable to the war effort than $1 billion worth of financial aid. Because
what about food? I mean, those people are probably at a loss to get food because of, you're in a war zone. I mean, so the supply lines are disrupted. I mean, I bet there's a lot of people who need just basic things like food and clothing and things like that. I mean, I don't mind helping Ukrainians with that sort of thing, but the idea that we're just going to ship a bunch of weapons and cash to them and just assume that it's all going to end up where it needs to go, I don't believe that for a second.
Yeah,
but
the idea that it's intended target.
The idea that the government is in Canada is preoccupied with Russian disinformation. I mean, that tells me that they know they're screw ups and they're looking for scapegoats. And hey, there's the Russians over there. And guess what? There are people here who are spreading Russian disinformation. I mean, they keep pushing this meme, this narrative with very little proof. There's no proof that somehow we're being deluged with Russian disinformation. I'm sure there's some, but the idea that somehow this is a major problem that we have to deal with and invest Canadian resources into this is ridiculous. Here's the story in MSN. The Prime Minister announced the new initiative as part of a package of new Canadian measures designed to support Ukraine and punish Russia. Canada is also imposing sanctions against 62 people. Okay, I guess they put these people on some kind of list. We don't want them here. Ottawa is planning to spend $4 million on 2 projects to bolster Ukrainians' military and police services. I mean, all fine, but the idea that somehow we have to throw money at Russian disinfo, to me, that speaks to a government that wants to shut people up, that wants people to self-censor, that wants people to constantly question whether I'm going to get in trouble if I say this or say that, and creating this whole element of uncertainty around our free speech. Everything he does, it seems like it's designed to shut people up and to push them into a narrative that is aligned with the regime rather than what they think for themselves. I don't know. Am I wrong?
No, I 100% agree with you. This Russian disinformation censorship is quite clearly a backhanded way of Canadian censorship. And I mean, hard proof of this is on the list of government Russian disinformationers. Andy Lee appears on it, and Rupa from the National Post appears on it. So neither of them have any ties to Russia. Neither of them have ever taken a dime from Russia. Ironically, in 2015, there was Russian funding of the Trudeau and the Liberals. This is another conveniently ignored fact among our media. I wonder why the media would ignore this. And of course, the Liberals. You understand why Justin Trudeau isn't too happy to rehash the fact that he was getting money from the Russians in 2015 because Harper was actually tough on Russia, whereas the Liberals were going with the sort of Obama world foreign policy, which is as long as we're nice and social justicey, evil can't exist if we believe in diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is something the Chinese and the Russians love because they love going up against soft idiots as world leaders. So the Russians, now I'm not saying Trudeau won because the Russians and the Chinese funded their campaign. I think there's reasons, legalization, it's a liberal country. Harper had been in for over a decade, right? But it doesn't defeat the fact that the Russians did support Trudeau in 2015. So, this is the man that we're dealing with. And this has been his MO for a long time, is calling things he doesn't like disinformation, and any information that does not fit the narrative. If it's a hard fact, well, you can just say, well, this fact benefits Russia, because you can paint yourself as I'm Justin Trudeau and I'm anti-Russia. So anything that goes against me is therefore pro-Russia. And this will essentially be the logic of the government censors. There's a 0% chance that the government censor is anyone who is in any way neutral or fact-based. There is a 4,015% chance that the person will be a liberal hack who will do exactly what Trudeau says. He's shown he wants these people in positions of power. Out with Jody Wilson-Raybould, in with David Lametti, because he does exactly what I say. The media censor will be the exact same. It will not focus on Russian disinformation. It will name a few Russian sites like Sputnik and like RT are Russian. It's like, okay, sure. But the main focus will be Rupa, Andy Lee, me, you, anyone who doesn't toe the line. And says the problem with inflation is there isn't enough transgender people on television. That will be the Canadian information. Anything else saying inflation is caused by money printing, that's Russian disinformation. So,
yeah, absolutely. We should get into the Lord of the Rings stuff in a little while, and the new woke version. I know you're going to be writing about that in the very near future. Daniel Bordman joining us on Saga 960, coming to us from the Toronto area. And he is with the National Telegraph. You can read his terrific work in the pages of, that website. I put up this poll, and naturally, as you would expect, got a lot of pushback from some people. Who does Justin Trudeau actually work for? All right. So at this point, China is at 12.9% of the respondents. Okay. So that's about almost 2,000 people. About 2,000 people responded to the poll, to the survey, I guess. World Economic Forum, 75.3%. Soros, 7%. The Rockefeller Foundation, 4.8%. The biggest response that I got from that was from people who said they wanted to say all of the above, and that wasn't an option, so they didn't know which one to pick. But it's surprisingly how popular that this survey turned out to be. I think it's a valid question. I mean, I don't think that the guy works for Canadians, Daniel. I mean, are you getting any indication that this guy is looking out after our interests? Because I don't.
No, No, I mean, like, I think the answer is, if we're gonna put, is like unintentionally all of the above. He has an ideology. Um, it's clear that he's ideologically driven, and I think he's a social justice nut, with, very little, you know, hard information and life experience to back that up. And I think his ideology benefits China, the World Economic Forum, George Soros, the Rockefeller Foundation. You can add a few others in there as well. The Russians benefit the Iranians. Like, there's a lot of regimes, evil regimes, that, I mean, Canada isn't that important, but are very happy with Justin Trudeau and all of this nonsense. So, does Justin Trudeau work for the best interest of Canadians? No. Now, you can make an argument that in his mind he believes that he's a utopian social constructionist. So he believes that if he eliminates racism by groping some women and putting on blackface and then accusing everyone else of what he's guilty of, he can bring apart utopia. And in the utopia, Canadians will thrive. Now, I think, and if he's ever been to a high school history class, he should have been thoroughly disabused of this. And the fact that we have someone with the ideology of a 14-year-old running the country is terrifying. But yeah, I think unintentionally he is working for all of these options and more. And I don't think the fact that he might have good intentions in his own mind absolves him of any blame here. I think it's, that's an excuse for children. Like, I guess I'll invoke the Jewish thing. Like, once you're the age of bar mitzvah, 13 years old, like, you have to morally evolve from this. Like, just because everyone's the good guy of their own story, everyone has good intentions, that doesn't mean you're a good person if you're just trying to do good. You actually have to think a little bit harder. And I don't think Justin Trudeau has ever evolved beyond that. So, he's a patsy for the Chinese. Or
it's the Chinese. Okay, so but you
or
think all of the above. I got most of the pushback I got was putting Soros in there because he's got a lot of operatives all over the place, certainly online. And I have read in the past that anybody going after him, the financier, is immediately labeled as an anti-Semite.
Oh, I hate that.
So by virtue of the fact that you're going after a guy who happens to be Jewish, somehow that means that you're anti-Semitic. And I don't know. I said, well, first of all, I'm not, but you're attacking me. I happen to be Italian. I mean, by your same logic, I guess that makes you anti-Italian. I mean, to me, it was ludicrous on the face of it, but it does say a lot about the angle that they're using in order to get people to stop attacking George.
Yeah, I once wrote a whole article on this years ago in a Jewish publication of how attacking George Soros isn't anti-Semitic. You can argue it's philo-Semitic, if anything. Understanding George Soros, you have to understand he was a Nazi sympathizer. So he did work with the Nazis as we'd call a capo, like selling Jews out to meet the Nazis. So the guy doesn't have the best track record. The guy is fervently anti-Israel, anti-Zionist. So he is opposed to we'll say, foreign policy and, dictates of the large swaths of the Jewish community. Now, is there an anti-Semitic way to critique George Soros? Yes, it is possible to critique George Soros in an anti-Semitic way, by like, once you say, well, George Soros is working with the globalists to create the Zionist agenda. It's like, okay, now because George Soros is a strong anti-Zionist, right? So you could get into that there, but George Soros is one of the greatest enemies of the modern, like, you can make an argument he's the number one. I have him in top 3 enemies of the Jewish people. He's in my top 3. So to critique the guy who's in Daniel's top 3 enemies of the Jewish people and call anyone who criticizes him as anti-Semitic is flat out ridiculous. I think critiquing George Soros in a, like, if you're critiquing things he's actually doing, then you're helping out the Jewish people, and we thank you. But this nonsense where anyone who critiques George Soros is labeled anti-Semite has to stop. It just has to stop. It is undermining. It's anti-intellectual. It undermines the Jewish people. There actually is real anti-Semites out there. They're called the Green Party or the NDP or most of the Liberal Party. And we need to have anti-Semitism. And the only time the left will pretend they care about anti-Semitism is when it fits their narrative. Soros is a lefty, so pretending they care about anti-Semitism benefits the left. To say, this is where the Soros thing, I think, comes from, is the left gets to pretend that they care about anti-Semitism when
Which they obviously don't. I mean, and all you have to do is look at
They
All you
fund
have to do is look at what happened with the Heritage Department of Heritage.
Yeah.
The government throwing $133,000 to this individual, Laith Maroof, allegedly as a form of getting consultation on the issue of anti-racism. Turns out that this guy is a vile anti-Semite. I mean, as a Jew, and you've been watching this unfold, now we're seeing Anthony Housefather throw the minister under the bus, saying, I told the minister about this guy, I warned him about his tweets, and he waited too long to do anything about it. And so here we are seeing internal infighting in the Liberal caucus now, as they point fingers and say it was his fault. No, it was his fault. So clearly they're getting an earful back home. Housefather back in Montreal getting yelled at by people saying, what are you doing, man? I keep voting for you guys, and you hire scumbags like this as anti-racism consultants. What's your take on all of this?
It's not even that they hired just him. The story gets even worse. The organization that subcontracted him, like the Canadian CMAH, Canadian Media Action Committee, or whatever it was that was funding him and his wife run that. So it's not like he was a one-off. He was the organization that the Heritage, Canadian Heritage, whatever, uses to teach the anti-racism. It's his organization. Him and his wife share the same address as that organization. They are the organization. So when the minister starts saying, oh, the CMAH or whatever, they all have these different acronyms, I can't remember, CMAH, they should have known. Let me get the acronym here. The CMAC. The CMAC should have known, and how did he get through the CMAC's vetting? This is what Ahmed Hussein was saying. He is the CMAC, which goes to my point where I've been saying for years now, this is a feature of social justice, not a bug. So anti-Semitism is a feature of social justice and not a bug. I would go one step further and say anti-Semitism is actually a pillar of the social justice movement and not a bug. Now, this is probably a 20-minute rant. I'm not sure how much I'll get into it, but the left and the social justice ideology needs anti-Semitism to survive. And this guy was such a fervent anti-Semite, and also what comes with this is it's anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism. Sorry, I didn't silence my phone. I'll let that on work call. But
what was that piece of music anyway?
That's the default ringer. I never really changed that. It's I'm not sure. We won't get copyright stuck for that. But yeah, essentially, I've been arguing for years. This is a feature, not a bug of social justice. And the way I'll quickly explain it, I can go a bit deeper, but the fundamental ideology of social justice is that all inequality is caused by all inequity is caused by inequality. So any difference in groups is caused by racism. The reason why Japanese Canadians make more than Somali Canadians is racism, not the fact that the average age of a Japanese male in Canada is 50 and the average age of a Somali male in Canada is 16. Racism. Or, whites make more than the Somali community because racism, not any other factors. Now, the problem is when you try to make the argument that racism and discrimination accrue financial success, the big, obvious, glaring problem to you is the Jews. The Jews experience the highest frequency of hate crimes in almost every Western nation. Canada, we're number one. America, number one. Europe, number one. Now, I still do not make the argument that Canada is an anti-Semitic country, even though social justice says we're a racist country. Again, Jews, number one. But if you're going to make the argument that hate crimes beget financial inequity, and that's why you need these equity programs, these social justice programs to fix these particular communities. Well, the Jews are a big problem for you because the Jews experience a factor of hate crimes that dwarf all these other communities. Yet they are still financially successful in our society. So you need to start to impose some classical anti-Semitic tropes in order to square this circle. So it then becomes to the left. They would never say Jews. They will say Zionists, which is 95% of Jews. Well, then they can go to the Zionists control the world. And it's not that, yes, racism and oppression cause financial equality, but the Jews might get oppressed or experience hate crimes in our society. But the only reason they're financially benefit in our society is because on a global scale, the Jews are partaking in this vast global conspiracy to oppress everyone else. So it is then you can say Palestinians in this case, or you could say whatever you want. So you've now re-engineered the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, which is this classical anti-Semitic conspiracy theory that precluded Hitler's ideology. Well, now you've taken this ideology and you've now ingrained it into the fabric of social justice, because without classical anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, social justice ideology falls completely apart, on the example of the Jews, because of the relationship.
You should be delivering this as a lecture,
yeah.
Daniel. I mean, this.
I have a
why
very
don't you teach
long
a class?
So
why
I
don't you
mean, this
teach
is why none of this surprises me, because I've been following this for years and years and years and years. And I've been making this prediction for years. The next Liberal primary after the Trudeau leadership, if it's an open primary and there's voting, there will be a dark horse candidate that no one really thought would do. They will come in second place and a strong contender, and they will run on a Corbyn anti-Semitic. Their go-to thing will be railing against Israel, and they might be able to just blame the Jews all the way to the Liberal leadership. That will be the big story of the next Liberal leadership race.
We got to talk about this as well. The Lord of the Rings. I know you're going to be writing about this.
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings showrunner Patrick McKay attempts to address concerns that the show will embrace modern woke politics. The Lord of the Rings, the Rings of Power. Is this going to be woke, and how woke is it going to be?
So I think it's going to be pretty woke. And I've been because they've marketed. It's the strange thing is, I don't like calling things woke garbage before they come out, but they marketed this show as woke garbage to start with. Like, the big thing was they had this viral thing about 6 months ago where they invited a bunch of super fans across a bunch of different countries to watch Lord of the Rings and say how awesome it was. But all these super fans, none of them were Lord of the Rings people. They were TikTok influencers, and all their talking points, as curated by Amazon, were diversity, 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 inclusion, diversity, girl power, diversity, diversity. You have that. And you also have the fact that they're focusing a lot on, sort of the actors are making a lot of woke noises. But the main character in this is Galadriel, who is an interesting character in the first movie, who plays a sort of ethereal, beautiful queen character of the elves, but doesn't rule through sex appeal, rules through wisdom. An interesting character. But in the prequel, they are focusing on her, as elves are immortal in this world, so they never die. And they've turned her into this warrior, where instead of, being this political wizard, she will be doing what look like some pretty cheap wire stunts and fighting trolls and orcs.
Wait, are there any gender fluid characters?
There probably will be. I'm not sure if there's any gender fluid orcs or gender fluid elves here, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's a non-binary dwarf thrown in there or whatever. And, a lot of what I find interesting is, like, they're just not doing simple things to get the lore right, which I always find it's a sign of bad quality in a show. Like, I'm not a big lore. I like the movies. I've researched a bit of the lore for the books for this, but female dwarves have beards in Tolkien's world. They don't have beards in this show. They did in The Hobbit. Elves all have long hair. They don't have long hair in this show. It's just simple things that indicate poor quality when you don't do the little things right like that. And they have $1 billion. So if you have $1 billion budget, you can afford some cosmetics to give female dwarves beards to go with the canon, and you can afford to give elves long hair to go with canon, but just not doing these little things.
But let me, I mean, they must realize that woke means broke. I mean, show after show, like the Wonder Woman, one of the Wonder Woman sequels, 1984, I think, was an absolute bust. You can name a number of movies that went woke that didn't make any money. And I mean, Disney has done that countless times. Are
you familiar with the concept of the hero's journey, or the hero story?
No.
So the hero's journey is often the hero goes through some trials and tribulations. They have to then, they fail at some point, and they have to work on their weaknesses and self-actualize, become a better person, and then they can defeat the bad guy at the end. Whereas the hero's journey, or the hero story, as it's been described by people, is the Captain Marvel, is the female character, and the female hero is actually perfect to begin with. She is so perfect and awesome, she has no flaws. The journey is the audience must go on a journey to realize that they must see the hero as perfect. And it's really society that has to come around and get over its flaws, which is usually misogyny, and realize how awesome the female character is in the end. And then she defeats the bad guy. So the female character has no progression. She is awesome, and she goes from perfect and awesome to perfect and awesome. It's really the audience that starts as racist and misogynist and must go on that journey to accept it at the end, which is bad storytelling. But this is indicative of a lot of woke feminist female storytelling. And that's often the reason why these shows suck, is because they're not going with sort of classical storytelling. And you can break storytelling by doing new tropes and messing around with tropes. But there is a reason why a lot of the hero story format is so popular, and why, there are a lot of times where female heroes are pretty awesome. It's when they go through the hero's journey, when they are not perfect, they work on a flaw, they overcome something, they become better, and then they can fight the bad guy. But in most Disney Marvel stuff, in most Disney stories now, the women are perfect. The problem is straight white men. They slay Queen, and finally the men, who are the straight white men, realize how awesome the female character is, and then she defeats the bad guy. So it's you that has to go on the hero's journey and not the character. And this is often woke storytelling. And this becomes very interesting with The Lord of the Rings, because this is a $1 billion show that, if it fails and they waste $1 billion, will they learn the lesson? Will Hollywood learn the lesson that if you go woke, you go broke? Or will they simply turn around and blame the fans, call everyone racist, and then double down and lose more money? So it's a very interesting time with this Lord of the Rings series coming out, that if it fails and they learn the right lesson, you could see a major turning point in Hollywood, let's say. All right. So you have the Rachel Gilmore story pulled up. I see she's claiming to have been harassed by people. Yeah, this I now call Rachel Gilmore the Taylor Lorenz of Canada.
Okay, are you I mean, clearly nobody wants to see this, anybody hassled. And certainly if this was a dangerous incident, then it's absolutely dead wrong. Nobody should go after any reporters in any way that is threatening to anybody. Nobody wants to see this. Here she is saying that someone who clearly owns guns directly threatened and harassed my entire family. I'm speaking to police about this, but it's already forced my loved ones to take precautions. You can disagree with my reporting, you can critique it, but don't threaten my family. So she's making the assumption here that there's a direct tie into her reporting and to this threat. I mean, maybe there is. Does she have proof of that? I mean, I don't know. What do you make of this? Nobody wants to minimize this, and nobody wants to see it. It's dead wrong.
So,
but I mean, do you have any questions about this at all?
No, so I don't doubt that someone made a threat against her and probably included her family into it. How credible is it? Journalists get threats all the time. So this is one of those, like, a lot of things can be true at once stories. Like, Rachel Gilmore is a bad reporter. She's bad at journalism, and she's doing terrible journalism. She's not doing a good job. Threatening her is wrong. Posting about every threat you get publicly probably begets more threats. It's also not her fault that people are threatening her. So there's a lot that can be done here as one. Like, when you're a journalist in any country, you're going to get pushback from it. Male and female journalists both get heat. I have a soft spot for people who get their family threatened for something they do. It's not a nice thing. It's pretty terrible to go through. And yeah, the villain here is the person who threatens her and her family. Like, don't do that. Now, do I sit there up at night thinking about Rachel Gilmore and worrying about her? No. I guarantee you Rupa gets threats. I guarantee you Andy Lee gets threats. I get threats. You probably get some.
I've been threatened, absolutely. I mean, in the field, if you're a reporter, yeah. I mean, I've had people absolutely threaten to kill me, threaten to attack me with a crowbar. I mean, yeah, it happens, and it's unpleasant when it happens. But in this case, she's saying that she got. My question, I have to ask her, because I guess this is a news story. I don't know. Maybe do you treat this as a news story? Because if she's been threatened, you have a reporter. She's saying, let's parse through the language here. Last night, someone who clearly owns guns directly threatened and harassed my entire family. Does she know this person? I'm curious. Does she know the name of this individual? I'm speaking to police about this, but it's already forced my loved ones to take precautions. You can disagree with my reporting. You can critique it, but don't threaten my family. I mean, okay, do we know for a fact that somebody who disagrees with her reporting is the one who made the threat? Is there a connection with this individual who apparently she knows for a fact owns guns? And so there's so many questions about this, Daniel. I mean, I don't know. What do you think?
No, like there are questions now because of what she's doing right now. Like she is going after Jeremy McKenzie and Pierre Poilievre right now. And, I put out some critiques of Jeremy McKenzie on Twitter recently, and, a lot of people aren't happy with me and coming after me. Am I a victim? No. Like, I'm a big boy, and I totally know that, like, when you critique someone who traffics in, anti-Semitic conspiracy theories and said, Hermann Goring was killed because he was making too much sense. This is the Nazi Air Force commander who committed suicide before the Nuremberg trials. He's going to have a pretty rabid fan base, and you're going to get into it. What I would like to see more of from Rachel Gilmore is a certain sense of toughness and moral clarity when she goes after him. Like, if you're going to go after Jeremy McKenzie, fine. Talk about what he actually said. Don't, like, what she's doing is she's going after Diagonalon, this fake country that's a meme that he created. And it's so clearly a meme. Diagonalon isn't a violent extremist group. It's a meme where the vice president is a toy goat, okay? It's clearly a meme designed to make stupid hack journalists like Rachel Gilmore explode. If you want to go,
but you're going to be attacked from this, right? She's going to say, "Here I am being threatened, Daniel.
Yeah,
and you're coming after me." And as she's saying this to the people who are enabling this, justifying and diminishing these threats, I hope you know you had a hand in making this worse. That means you, Daniel. I mean, if you're diminishing this, then you're enabling it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just like, listen, Rachel, if you're watching this, if you want to stop these threats, you can file a police report, put the guy on public platform. If someone with guns threatens you and your family, put his name and the thing out there, record the voicemail or whatever, and put the threat out there. Say, this is Hank Smith from whatever, and he's saying this. Put it out there and show that you're tough and, like, you come after me, fine. Here it is publicly. Here's the threats I get. And again, I have sympathy, and the worst thing about it here is if someone is threatening her and her family, that's the worst thing that's happening right there. It's not the fact that she's turning a meme from someone who has, bad political views into, like, no one has ever made, like, the problem with Rachel Gilmore is Jeremy McKenzie was a totally irrelevant player in Canadian politics. Totally irrelevant. Maybe he streams and gets a few thousand people with their Plaid Army nonsense, which is utterly on the fringe. By critiquing it and doing such a poor job critiquing it, she has now turned, because my fear is people will look at Diagonalon, what they're reporting, and say, oh, this is clearly a meme. And there's nothing wrong with Diagonalon. Jeremy McKenzie's actually kind of funny. And there's nothing there. If you want to go after McKenzie,
all right,
go
so
after
here,
McKenzie's
okay. Now here's your colleague, Wyatt Claypool. We keep pointing out by posting information on all these very likely fake threats that you are incentivizing more fake threats so that people can see your post about them online. I don't know, man. That's pretty cold of Wyatt.
Yeah,
I mean,
Wyatt is ice cold. Wyatt,
wow.
Wyatt, facts do not care about Wyatt's feelings, and Wyatt has 4 feelings over the last 20 years. So, listen, Wyatt is right. He's being a bit truculent and cold on this, but again, Wyatt's right here. When you post about these in a nebulous way, you're going to get more of this because you're putting yourself in the center of the controversy and all this. Now, it doesn't mean that people should threaten her, but it's a common sense sort of look at me. And can you say, is her goal actually to incentivize more threats? So she can
have a conspiracy. Well, look, CH has come out and said, like, I think she's working with Trudeau to push C11. So,
yeah.
So his or hers, CH says this is a ploy. But there, it's dangerous if you're going to say that this person's threat is not real because you don't know what she experienced. I don't. I mean, I can't. My first instinct is to take her at face value and say this happened and it was wrong and it should be investigated. But the journalist part of me says I need a few more facts, please and thank you. Which police department? Which police officer did you talk to? If this is a news story, then presumably this needs to be reported as a news story. So give
Yeah, I
us
mean,
the where,
I'm
how,
with you.
why, what's, and the rest of them, right?
Yeah, because this is very vague, which is another problem here. Where it's like if she's right, I'm with her. But again, being vague here doesn't help anyone because let's be honest, this story where female leftist journalist gets harassed, it absolutely ticks every check mark in every box of every police captain for diversity stuff. All of them would love to turn this into a whole dog and pony show and be the feminist hero and save the woman and blah 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 and all of this. So I'm skeptical to guess what the extent of these threats are, how credible they are. Like, put
And
it
I
out
mean,
there.
she's getting hammered online. She did get some support from Elizabeth Renzetti, who's a columnist, I guess. Yeah, she's a columnist, a journalist. I simply asked some questions like, which police force did you speak with? Where did this happen and all this stuff. I've yet to receive any response. Clearly, Global, who employs this individual, has to be involved with this, right? I mean, she works for Global, so this is something that the news department should be involved in. But here she is online, kind of doing. I don't know. This is not happening on behalf of the news department or anything like that. I would expect to see some kind of release from her employer. Maybe I don't know. This just raises more questions for me than answers. And then she's also getting it from people who say it's not legit. Like, let's see, we got Canadian Bacon here, right? We've been threatened with your help for 2.5 years. Welcome to the party. I'm sure you and your family will be fine. So clearly he's talking about people who have not gotten the shots. Other people are posting memes like this, her. So people are not being overly supportive here, Daniel.
No, I mean this is. I mean, people are not wrong. This is a bit of a reap what you sow. Like the trust between the
Wait a
public and
minute.
the
Are you
media.
saying she deserves this?
No, like I'm not saying she deserves this, but I'm just saying, like this is both like you can't like if you're she doesn't. No one deserves this, but if you're contributing to this climate where again the people are posting article where she's like, "Can you talk to your unvaccinated family at Thanksgiving this year? Isolate. These people are bad. These people are bad." Like, understand that when you enter the political sphere, you're going to get some blowback no matter what you say. Because politics are people's personally held beliefs. You're attacking their intelligence, their identity, like everything about them. So people either love or hate what you say. You just kind of have to understand this. And when you sort of engage in the culture, which is demonizing people for a long time, understand that you're making enemies. So, like, yeah, sometimes when I criticize the alt-right, I know that people on the alt-right aren't going to be happy with me. I'm not going to act like, oh my God, I said something bad about an alt-right figure, and now all these alt-right people are saying mean things to me. I'm a victim. Look at me. It's like, well, no, I totally expected this from them. Like it's they're wrong to
Am
do
I
it.
wrong? I just asked her to be interviewed. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm not. I don't think I'm being crass here.
no.
I'm covering a news story. Would you agree to be interviewed? Let's see if she responds. I don't think she will. I don't think she. I don't think she's going to respond to me at all. I mean, I've asked her some other questions about this matter. So far, nothing. And I said, look, I mean, do you know the person who made the threat? I mean, other people point out, well, how do you know that these people who are these people that have guns? I mean, I don't know.
If someone had a picture of them holding a gun saying, I'm going to come after you, you B word, and
Like
your
here it is right
family,
here.
C
Not
word.
sure what you mean by clearly owns a gun. This is by Joanne. Anyone that threatens someone with a gun needs to face justice. That's why I oppose Trudeau's gun policy of soft on criminals and hard on law abiding Canadians. I don't agree with your politics, but I also am a mama bear and will defend. Okay.
I agree.
All
Yeah.
right. So, but I don't know. I think you have to tread carefully. I mean, on the face of it, you can't treat it as if it's not legit. It's probably legit. But on the other hand, once you go down that road, then I think you have to furnish more details. You're going public. You're talking about something that happened to you. Presumably, you know that this could be a news story where a reporter is being threatened by people who apparently have guns. Then, let's see some more answers here. Come forward, be interviewed. I mean, if you're a journalist, then you understand the need to get clips and sound bites and all that other kind of thing. But let's see if she says she will agree to be interviewed. So far, I got retweeted. Would you agree to be interviewed? So, I mean, I don't know. Would you consider interviewing her if she agreed to talk to you about this?
Absolutely.
Is it not a story on National Telegraph?
Yeah, we'd write a story about that, and I mean, why it's been pretty engaged on the Rachel Gilmore stuff even before the Jeremy Mackenzie. He's been doing a breakdown of just how bad her journalism is, and why it is equally not a fan of her and Mackenzie, and is sort of up on this. So I would interview her. I'd get her side. Like, you should never threaten people and make violent threats. That's bad. Don't threaten people. Also, her reporting is trash. She is the number one recruiter to the alt-right in Canada right now.
Hold on. She's the number one what?
Number one recruiter of alt-right people.
Recruiter of alt-right.
She is doing.
How does she recruit alt-right? I mean,
with her trash reporting, because listen. There's a way to go after Jeremy Mackenzie for what he said, but to pretend that Diagonal Lawn is the threat is because what she's doing is she's ruining any criticism of a man who deserves criticism. Okay, I've looked at Jeremy Mackenzie's record, and there's audio clips of him doing things like, again, saying Hermann Goring was killed because he had was making too much sense. This is a high-ranking Nazi. The Nuremberg trials were kangaroo courts. He is trafficked in Holocaust denialism, and basically called it propaganda. A bunch of other things that are like, okay, here's what he said and why it's bad. If you want to go after Mackenzie, say, this is what he said. Instead, she's saying Jeremy Mackenzie, the founder of an a very dangerous hate group called Diagolon, which experts say she did a thing where she said experts say it's dangerous because Jeremy Mackenzie says the government is a problem. So she's saying experts say that anyone who says the government is a problem is dangerous and potentially violent, which is an absurd argument. So people are going to look at this and say, okay, what's Rachel Gilmore saying? She's saying that Diagolon is a dangerous hate group because experts say criticizing the government is bad. People are going to say, I criticize the government. I'm not dangerous. And they're going to say, what is Diagolon? Oh, it's literally a meme country run by a goat.
Okay, but here she seems to be suggesting that, frankly, people like you and Wyatt are kind of enabling this. To the people who are enabling this, justifying and diminishing these threats, I hope you know you had a hand in making this worse. This is a way to shut you up.
Yeah, sucks.
That's the way I read it. I mean, it is. I mean, whether the threats are real or not, is one thing. I'm going to assume that she's telling the truth, that the threats happened and that it has to be dealt with. I agree with her.
Yeah.
But here she's saying, if you're minimizing what I'm saying, then you're responsible. Then you have, a role to play in the fact that she's being threatened.
Yeah, this is one of those, a lot of things we do at once. Threatening her is bad. She's a terrible reporter. Her reporting is trash. Her opinions are horrid. And her opinions undermine her ability to be a reporter, because that's kind of the way of the current mainstream media is. And this is one of the reasons I left the arts community and doing stand-up, is because the artists in Canada and a lot of the media people, they are eroding the very platform in which they need to stand in a liberal society. I don't mean liberal party. I mean classically liberal values of equality. She is eroding the platform of free speech and civil discourse. And then she is suffering the consequences and screeching about that. Now, I want to maintain these platforms, and part of that is defending her when people threaten her. Say, this is a symptom of the breakdown of society when you're threatening journalists. Don't do it. However, people shouldn't be eroding the foundations of society. That is Rachel Gilmore. So it's a very complicated space to engage in. And what Rachel Gilmore is doing to make it even more toxic is she's taking shots, particularly at the people trying to exist in this space of moral clarity, where it's like, you suck at what you're doing, Rachel, but these threats are also bad. Also,
all right. What if I ask her? I'm
way
going to ask her a question. Do you mind if I speak with the investigating officer? Who is it? Are these legit questions for a journalist? I think
yeah,
so. Who is
it
that
is, but she's
person?
she's a TikTok host on Global News.
You mind if I speak with the investigating officer? Who is that person? Will I get a response?
No.
So far, she has not responded. But to me, if this, I'm going to treat this seriously. I want to cover it seriously as a journalist. I'd like to speak with the investigating officer. What's wrong with that? That's a legit request from somebody who's been threatened.
You should have been at this time of day, you should have been the 20th person to ask this question. In a functioning democracy, is someone from CTV and CP24 and the Montreal Press and whatever, they all should have beaten you to that question, because it's what you should be asking. Like right away, someone should have been like, okay, who's the investigating officer? Can we look into this? But again, we're enabling this bad behavior on her side, which, like, yeah, just because someone is exhibiting bad behavior, you cannot threaten them. But again, what Rachel Gilmore is doing is she's taking shots at people like us who are trying to exist in this area of moral clarity. We're saying, you suck. The way you're acting is not helpful, but also threatening you is bad. And she's trying to say, well, no, you guys are the problem, because this is the ideology of the left, which is now the mainstream media, which is to categorize everyone in the same thing. So if you ever disagree with Rachel Gilmore, well, then you're just as bad as Jeremy.
Let me ask you this. Why not? I mean, if you don't like her, why not just ignore her? I mean, at the end of the day, that's really the greatest weapon. That's why CBC is falling apart, because people just don't consume their content anymore. Their audience went from whatever it was, 2 or 3 million, to like nothing. And I mean, there's nothing these people hate more than being ignored. I mean, they would rather be attacked and vilified by people like you or me than they would rather, they really dislike being ignored. Why not just say, look, I don't like your reporting, Rachel, so I'm just not going to consume your content, and end of story.
Yeah, that would be ideal. But again, she's pretty good at getting attention on her. And another problem is her and the rest of the media have been doing this game where they've, she said the thing, well, you want to criticize my reporting? Fine. Well, no. For the last year, that's not been fine. We've been told frequently, maybe not by her, but by the mainstream media, that to criticize a woman's reporting in any way, to criticize her on her job, well, this is inherent sexism and it's harassment, right? This is the Taylor Lorenz thing. People criticize Taylor Lorenz, horrible reporting, and the media said this is harassment. This is, so you've already cried wolf here. So, and Rachel Gilmore was playing this game before where criticizing reporting was harassment. Well, now she's getting actual threats, and she's learning the difference between people saying you suck and I'm going to kill you. Now, the first one is fine. Cyberbully journalists all you want. That's like cyberbully me. That's what I'm at. I make myself available for cyberbullying because I put my opinions online. I understand the consequences of doing that. People are going to love me for what I say, and people are going to hate me. It's the way of the modern world. But there's a huge difference between saying, you suck, Daniel, I think you're an idiot, and you said this about my favorite whatever, I'm going to kill you. These are two different things. And it would be disingenuous if I was treating everyone for the last 5 years who said you suck as if they were harassing and threatening me. Well, then people are just going to learn to ignore me, right? I would like to save okay, it's crossed the line for when it crosses the line, right? If I get someone who takes a picture of guns and says, I'm going to hunt you down, Daniel, and go after you of your family, well, I'm going to then take that, post it online, say, this is the guy who did it. I'm going to file a police report and then goad the police into doing something by saying, here's the evidence of, here he is posing with guns, saying he's coming after me. This is a death threat. This is serious. Like, now it's crossed the line. But someone saying you suck, you're fake news because you don't take you don't like you have a different opinion than me, just ignore it, make fun of it, whatever, like all that. But CH is right. Like, legit criticism is not misogyny, but we've been pretending it is for the last year. And this is why a lot of people are having trouble distinguishing this story, because people like Rachel Gilmore have been crying wolf over nothing for years. And now she's like, there might actually be a wolf now. And
well, you're setting yourself up to be shredded. And part of me kind of admires your chutzpah. Because if she's actually been threatened by somebody, then you look like a horrible person for casting aspersions on that.
It's not
So
uncasting
why
aspersions.
not?
Just I'm just kind of saying like there's a way to mitigate this, and she's kind of doing everything she can to inflame it. It doesn't make it her fault.
So you're so by
but
going online. Okay, so you're saying she's wrong to go online and talk about this?
in this way, like, be clear, say this guy did this, like, by saying, by putting out nebulous I'm being threatened and no one's doing anything about it. Well, this is where I kind of agree with Wyatt. I never say it to her face. I guess I'm saying it publicly now. But it is the thing where, like, when you go out and you say I'm getting all these threats, people are coming after me, it's so terrible, well, then you're sort of creating a bit of a media storm where crazy people are going to want to get involved, right? But if you smack the actual guy, you say this is Henry Smith, here's what he said, I filed this to the police report, do something, and people see that, oh, okay, this isn't just a woman crying for attention. This is a woman who will take down anyone who attacks her. Well, then you're showing people that you're
Are
deterring.
you saying this is Jussie Smollett? I mean, is this where you're going?
No, this isn't made up. This is just ineffective. Like, she sucks. Like, I'm saying she sucks at her job, which is reporting. She sucks with her opinions because they're eroding her the foundation of journalism. And she sucks at playing the victim. Not that she isn't the victim, she just sucks at being one. She's not like, I have, if I were to go in and get another professional career as a victim coach and how to, fight back as the victim of harassment, she's kind of doing everything you would like. I'm just saying the way she's going about this to reduce further death threats sucks. Not that they're not real, not that
okay,
you shouldn't be doing them. I'm just saying the way she's going after this and trying to mitigate this sucks.
I approach this as a reporter.
Yeah.
A person in journalist makes a
and
claim.
I approach this as a
has been threatened.
Yeah.
I'd like the details. Where did it happen? How did it happen? Which police force did you file? Is there an investigating officer? Is there a police report? Time, all the questions that you need to ask if you're covering this as a news story. That's where I'm at right now. I'm not saying it happened. I'm not saying it didn't happen. As far as I know, that is what you're saying. I take it at face value. Give me more. Give me the details, please, and thank you. If you're a journalist, you understand the questions I'm asking because you would be asking them if you were covering a story in which somebody else was threatened. Yeah. So far, I've heard precious little from Ms. Gilmore. I've asked for an interview, nothing. I've asked if she knew the person who made the threat. So far, nothing. She responded to Elizabeth Renzetti, who says, I'm so sorry to hear this. We don't need this. Fair enough. But where's the answers to the questions I'm asking? There's just the nuts and bolts answers to the questions that I'm asking. Which police department did you file the report with? Will you be interviewed? Can I speak with the investigating officer? Who is that person? So far, there's nothing. I mean, and I'm not going to cast aspersions as to why she's not responded to me, but she hasn't responded to me. So what am I to think? Anyway, I got to wrap this up. Daniel, you want to take one last go at this?
I think you've said everything, and my computer's not low battery, so I'll avoid. No, I think we agree, and I mean, this is one of those stories where a lot of different things can be true at once, and the death of nuance is really coming home to roost here, and it would be nice to see a bit more nuance, and hopefully the mainstream media can learn some lessons here. Hopefully they listen to what we said and can be better in the future.
All right. Thank you, Daniel. Appreciate it.
All right. Anytime.
All right. Let's take a break. Back with more on News Talk, Saga 960, and the Mark Petrona Show after this.